what we'll move on to next is we're going to transition into some sign design. And so I've started with this little the slideshow here that has some of the main points that I came up with some topics that we could discuss. I think we'll touch on these really briefly, CJ, and then we're going to open up a design template on CJ's computer to design our own sign. But thought we could start with just some basic principles and some ideas of things to be aware with. But again, when we're actually in the software, we'll be able to see more of these things in work. So CJ, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, sure. Dan's got a couple of good things to know. And if any of you have been involved in the process of designing something that goes to production, there's some keywords that you've probably heard before or things you've dealt with. If you haven't, this may be new for you. The first thing I'll talk about is image resolution, which has got a resolution versus pixel. Basically, when we look at an image, and you look at an image on screen, you have millions of pixels on your display. Well, there's what's called PPI. It's basically pixels per inch. If you can imagine, in an inch, you probably have 1,000 pixels on your screen, right? Somewhere in that area. Well, the same thing applies in printing or sign work as DPI, dots per inch. So what happens if you've ever seen something printed that looks really blurry or grainy, that was an image that was taken probably from a website, and most images on the web are what's called 72 DPI, 72 dots per inch. When you take those and put it on, they look fine on screen because your computer can interpolate that and show it cleanly. When you take that image and put it on paper or a sign, you end up with a kind of a blurry mess. So one of the things to look for is to make sure you have a high quality image when you're starting with your artwork. If you have an idea for, if you're wanting to do, and let me actually jump in here. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm looking at files. One of the easiest ways to get an idea is if you look at file size. So for example, I have some images here that Danny's collected that we've kind of gone through together. And JPEGs are an example of what's called a raster image, or it's a photograph basically. So we have one here that's 2 meg, 1 meg, 4 meg. Those are all going to generally be moderate to high. Anything over a meg or 2 will generally be printable. There's ways to dig into the picture in Photoshop and look at the resolution, but for the easiest way to understand what you're doing when you're trying to put the graphic together is what's the file size. So if I scroll into, so here's some images that these were ideas. We'll get back to this, but these are some things that were grabbed off the internet, right? So this is here's a little image of a sticker, right? You might think, oh, that's a great idea. Let's print that. That's 134K. So on screen, this looks great, right? But as I start to zoom in here, you guys see how this gets blurry, and I'm not sure how this is going through Zoom. Basically, if you print that, it'll be barely legible because it's such low resolution, it's a small file. So it's an easy way to kind of get an idea about resolution and how that works. Colors, fonts, things of that nature. So colors, that's fairly straightforward. He actually has a good little representation here. You want to use high contrast in signage because typically you're more than a foot, 2 foot, 10 foot, or even 20, 30 feet away. So you want to generally try to use high contrast colors if you can. So if you have a white text, the black font works great, right? And that reverses the other direction. Keep that in mind. The other thing with fonts, non-serif fonts that are blocky tend to be more legible. Things like impact. If you look at the image on the screen right now, the word delicate, you would not want to generally put that on a sign because people are going to be looking at them briefly from a distance. It's not legible unless you're reading it closely. Something like the word, let's look at serious, is definitely more legible, right? Those kinds of non-serif, clean, simple fonts tend to work better for signs. The other thing that we'll look at is the use case of the materials. We're going to print today on a ACM board. It's aluminum composite material. So it's aluminum face with a composite inner. So it's a cost-effective, recyclable material, but we're going to print on direct to substrate. So I've got a large printer that'll print directly on the board. So there's no vinyl involved. You just have ink and material. So it lasts decently well. It's UV, it's UV ink, so it lasts in the sun decently well. It's better indoors for longer term, but it's a good middle of the road solution for most kind of outdoor or simple signage. So with that said, Dan?
Yeah, so I'm sure there's lots of other sign design advice that we could come across, but what we're going to do is dive into the project right now. And I'm sure other questions will come up and we can share those as we go. So before we start forward, I'm going to show you the design ideas that I came up with. A couple ideas that I came up with, and composting. I mentioned the conference call we had last month, and composting was a huge idea that came up. And so I started working through some ideas here. And what really I think has stuck with me is this idea of compost in a bottle. So I found this really cool science experiment where it kind of gives you instructions on how to put different layers together as you would in a traditional composting system. So really focusing on that idea of putting those layers, so your carbon and your nitrogen and kind of like a fertilizer or soil in there, layer those up. And that can happen in any scenario. So how can we inspire green behavior change around composting? I think the first step is to educate on what composting is, how it works, and do it through small steps there. So I don't want everyone to go home and dig up a trench in their backyard and start composting, because parents might get upset. It might be a little much to take on. But if we can start really small as an experiment, then we can grow that experiment and do it in different ways, because we have vermiculture, we have trench composting, we have compost tumblers, we have big compost kind of machines that do these big things. We can have huge piles of compost going on. But the goal of my sign I came up with is to encourage home composting. So we're all home with everything going on right now. There's a lot of time being spent at home. And so I want my sign to engage kids and adults at home to be able to learn more about composting, start an experiment of composting, and hopefully as a result, maybe even put in a real compost system in their yard at some point. So I started with these ideas, and I've sent all the photos. I got those photos together. I've worked with my brother on lots of signs, as we had mentioned, so I kind of know the process. You know, the first step in doing the research is getting some images to give you some inspiration, and then getting the stock photos. So I went through, I use a website called Pixabay, which I found to be really great. I can find a lot of diverse pictures and they have the good quality on there. And so I pulled those pictures together, and then I also put some content together, so copy as we would call it, for the text part of it. So I'm gonna now pass it over, and I'll stop sharing the screen and give it back to my brother so he can bring his stuff up, and we will start doing some fun designing here and see what we make of this.
Because we're half hour in, I'm going to do a fast design here, because the idea was to produce it as well, so you guys could see how we actually produce these things. We're going to do, so what we had previously done here was gathered some images as discussed. I have a few different sites I use for imagery. So imagery on the internet. If you do a Google search for, I don't know, pictures of rotting fruit or something, or food here, you'll find 1 million images or 1 billion images. You can, technically you're not supposed to use those because they're owned by someone. Someone's taken the time and had spent the money and effort to take that photo. That said, you can also, if you're just searching that way, you can also use, there's ways to use a search function within Google to look for freely available images. So there's a lot of people who take photos and use those for the public to use. So you can use them for whatever you want to do with. What's that? Danny says they're usually horrible. Danny. My brother, my son says that. So that said, I am trying to find the sample image showing the compost bottle, and is that on the website?
You have to take like a second to that.
Yes, it was on Pinterest. There it is. Let me copy that. I don't know if that's going to work. I'm going to try it. There it is. Okay, that's what we're building. So this is one of the ideas that Danny had seen and pinned to a board, was a compost in a bottle. So you need soil, fertilizer, fruit, veggie, newspapers. So you see, I am using a software called Adobe Illustrator, okay? You can do this. You can do some of this work in Canva, which is a freely available piece of software. Photoshop, obviously, you can do some work in there. There's different ways to do it. I like using Illustrator and Photoshop. We use InDesign as well here at the store, but for this kind of project and for ease of use and speed of use, I'm going to do the whole thing in Illustrator. Basically, we're going to create this layered system here with these with this bottle in this bottle. So to start with, so I've created this right here is called vector artwork. You see that we've got points here and then lines. So when we talk about images versus vector art is fully scalable. I can make this thing, whoops, forgive me, put it back in the center. I can make this 1 inch tall and it looks perfect at 1 inch tall. Or I can make this thing, I'm not going to do it, but you can make it 10 feet tall and it's still perfect, because what's happening is this piece of software sees these points on my screen and says from here to here is a perfectly straight line. I don't care how long that line is, it's a perfectly straight line. From here to here is a curve. I don't care how big that curve is, it's just a curve. So all we're doing is either adding a color to the stroke or a color to the fill or a gradient. So vector art is typically shown in this way. We're going to use it to start with, and we're going to make a 18-inch tall bottle. Well, maybe, yeah, maybe not. Well, I just made 18-inch wide bottle, excuse me. There we go. All right, and so our first layer, we need soil. So I have some soil here provided by Danny. We're just going to put that there, but that's way too big. So what we will do, we're going to go ahead and send this back a layer. And I'm just going to let's make a band here, okay? And I'm going to add a little happy little outline to it, right? We'll do some Bob Ross here.
Happy clouds.
Happy clouds. So that outline, I'm now going to take that outline and I'm going to make what's called a clipping mask. And now I just have a band of soil, okay? So there's my band of soil. Now I can get fancy with that line. Go to Effect, and I can warp it. And we're going to do a wave, and I'm going to preview. Why am I not waving? Let me try to undo what I've done here real quick. Let's say we want to give it a more organic shape, right, other than just a rectangle. Effect, start, I want to go well warp, wave. Okay, there it goes. Vertical, that's what I've done. It's not working the way I planned. Let me find something else here, please. Zigzag this thing, actually, probably.
There's so many buttons on this program.
Yes, well, let's do that.
How long have you been working on this, like this program, Craig, to get used to it?
Oh, I know what I've been doing here. I've been doing this, I guess, 15 years. And there's people to be clear, I have full-time designers that do this every day that are better than this than me. But I am good enough to be dangerous, I guess. So there's a little bit of a shape to it. And we can actually get in here and can modify the shape even a little bit more if we want to make it a little bit more funky. Okay, there's a shape. So we're going to start there with that shape. Now the next thing I need is fruit and veggie scraps. So we're going to put this in here. Well, that's too big, so let's make it a little smaller. Send it to the back. That one, actually, I don't need to do let's put a path over that one, but that one doesn't need to be as wild. Actually, let's make that one there. I'm going to make a mask over that one. But I want this to be on the top of that. We're going to take my soil I got here, and we're going to go Object, Transform, Reflect it. Okay. Same piece of artwork is used twice. We're cheating, right? So now I need some newspaper. Well, look at that. I've got some newspaper. So we're going to minimize this a bit here so it fits a little better. But again, I want to crop this newspaper to a little band of paper here. Send that to the back again. I need some more. I feel like my dirt might be too thick. What do you think, Dan?
think it's too thick.
I think it's thin out the dirt some. Thin the dirt.
Yeah, a smaller amount of that.
Another band of dirt here. Okay. And now we need leaves and grass. Well, I have some leaves representing leaves and grass here.
Grass.
This represents leaves and grass. So kind of like it looking like that. What do you guys think? So we will put this, and again, make another clipping mask here. That's what I've done wrong. Object transform reflect. All this time. Okay, and now I need some more fruit and veggie. Make this one look different, I'm going to go object transform reflect. Basically, I'm just changing the orientation of that. And I can also take that image and slide it up. Pretend like I've got more there than I really have. So we're going to copy this top layer. And actually, I'm going to release the mask on that top layer. Done so, okay. And I did not do that correctly because that's supposed to be fertilizer in these center items, isn't it?
You know, a lot of it is about layering. I think that's the kind of main point of this sign.
So we can use the copy to adjust for that. So now we have our layering, right? I need to do one more. You know what I need to do? Take that. And I'm going to open that up a bit here. I do need to put a mask over that. Now I've got that layer there. So bring it to the front, and that's what we have. So I am going to now take this item here, take a copy of that, all of this stuff, all of that, and make a mask, and put that at the front. And there it is.
Wow.
We've just made a beautiful, amazing, make that a little more funky there. Compost bottle.
Wow.
Okay. Any comments there, Dan?
Yeah, so I think the image itself looks great. And so I want to convey some information now, though.
Okay. You want to use the copy from this, so this kind of idea here?
Yeah, I think to identify the layers.
Okay.
And then also, again, we'll be sending this out. And so we hope that the learner will be able to use what they see to build their own compost bottle.
Okay. So we talked about font types. I'm a big fan of Futura. It's very clean, easily readable. So we're going to label this for now, compost in a bottle here. Let's go, let's make that one. That's the...
Maybe a subtitle like, it's all about the layers.
It sounds like a song. And so we might use actually what we might do with that one is use a different font. We're trying to be have a little fun. Maybe we'll do a condensed oblique here.
How many total fonts do you think there are?
A lot. It's a good question.
10,000.
Let's just slide this over here. this here. How's that feel?
That's beautiful.
All right, we can work on colors and stuff later. Maybe we like that bottle cap to be blue. Whoops.
So folks that are watching at home, please feel free to give us suggestions. Let's work this out.
So we're going to take and pull this down. Now, I'm a big fan of no more than 3 fonts in any image or sign. I know that fonts exist and they're fun to play with, but too many of them make things illegible and hard to read. So that was probably too small. Let's go. Please never use Comic Sans or Papyrus. Sin in design. All right, so we're going to start here with soil. And one of the neat things about some of the softwares is the ability to copy things. So I can just click here and drag. I'm going to figure out that soil, and I'll use that more than once. See how it's going to look here. So we're going to do draw us a line with an arrow. Stroke tool. Heavier, and we're going to have always the wrong end.
All right, so as CJ's finishing up on some of these touches, please feel free to share your thoughts on there. But what I'd like to go ahead and do, I'm going to share my screen and show you a video that came in from Suzanne Perry Slavens, who is the Outdoor Education Director at the Irvine Ranch Outdoor Education Center. So let me grab this screen here. So Suzanne wanted to make our conference call today, but she had something else come up, so she wasn't able to join us. But she was excited to connect with some of the interns that she brought in to the Irvine Ranch Outdoor Education Center to help do some sign design. So how appropriate is that? So she made this, it's about 5 minutes. She also has some documentation that I can share following about the interview process to bring these interns in to support with this project. So I'll go ahead and play this video, and we'll come back to you soon.
Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne Perry Slavens, and I'm the Life Science Director at the Irvine Ranch Outdoor Education Center. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we're using signs at the Outdoor Ed Center to promote eco-literacy. So the number one thing that we use our signs for is just for discovery, to help the kids understand and interpret the environment, to provide kids with tools for wayfinding so that they can explore on their own and be independent discoverers and independently find answers to their questions. We're home to one of the first food forests in Orange County, which means that we have been working to create an agricultural ecosystem that provides habitat to endangered species while simultaneously producing food for human beings. And it's an amazing place, and we let our students explore in groups, of course, to stay safe, and we give them challenges to search and discover as many different plants that are present and to understand how those plants serve the ecosystem as a whole. So signs are essential to our program and to our ability to let the students be independent learners. Secondarily, we use our signs to speak the language of visual learners. Most students do not learn auditorially, so visual aids are essential to an effective environmental education program, and they allow us to connect with students on a level that we just can't connect with when we're speaking so theoretically and just using auditory teaching methodologies. So ecosystem services, that's a key concept for life sciences for the next generation science standards, but it's a very abstract idea. but it's essential, it's completely crucial that kids understand all of the services that healthy ecosystems provide to human beings. Our food, fiber, fuel, medicine, timber. We don't get to have any of those provisioning services if we don't cultivate and care for the supporting services, such as photosynthesis, biodiversity, nutrient cycling, and soil formation. All of these ideas are very abstract and they don't really sink in without a visual aid, and they become much more accessible. So our instructors have their lesson plans that they're following, and they are amazing and engaging, but the signs make it possible for the students to really get the most out of the outdoor classroom. And lastly, the reason why we really exist, I believe, as environmental educators is to motivate students to take concrete actions to conserve the environment. The whole purpose of my work, I believe, is to help cultivate and raise up the next generation of environmental stewards. And so these signs help the students understand certain concrete action steps that they can take to make a difference. So we teach them how to compost. You can see the kids working on our compost pile here at the bottom of this slide. And then we provide them with signs that they can take a deeper look and understand the science of compost and understand what steps they would need to take if they wanted to build a compost pile at home. So I'll leave you just with this thought from Baba Dayoum, he was a forestry engineer in Senegal in the 60s and 70s. And he said, in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand. And we will understand only what we are taught. And so the effort of environmental education is essential, I believe, to the future of the planet. And I hope that this short presentation provides you with tools that you need in order to increase your capacity to teach your kids. If you want additional resources, then feel free to reach out to me. You can find my contact information by visiting our website, www.outdooreducationcenter.org. And I wish you all the best. And Danny, thank you so much for the good work.
Awesome. So that was Suzanne Perry Slavens, Life Science Director at the Irvine Ranch Outdoor Education Center. She did apologize for cutting off the end there, but she's a great advocate for what we're doing at Green Camps. And the Irvine Ranch Outdoor Education Center, one of our first members of Green Camps, has been doing a great thing out there. Lots of great things happening there. So we are now going to just quickly, let's look at where our design is at this point. So again, we've had about maybe 10 minutes of design here, and so let's see where we're at. So I'm going to stop my share. If you want to take the share back over. I will share screen. So we'll see where we're at with that. And again, I think that we're going to we could add a lot more to this and continue getting deeper with it, such as putting more information on there. But we'll see where we get right now. It is about 2:48, so we're going to switch into our mobile mode. I have this really cool mobile device that will allow us to walk around. So we're going to check out the shop, and we'll send this over. So any other comments on how that process went, CJ?
You know, obviously this is a rush sign job. It's a start to something, right? But you guys kind of can see what I've done.
You might be muted.
Oh, no, wait. All right, let's try that again. So obviously this is a rush design job, but I think you can all see kind of the concept. We kind of took some idea that was provided by something else we found, kind of made it our own here. Yes, these probably could be spaced a little better. We could probably use some color to even break these apart a little better, like as a back. Let me just see what that does real quick. Let me try something. I wonder if I can get some colors. I don't know if here. That may give us a little more character. Let's see if we do it alternating.
So it's all about the layers.
I'm not sure if I like that or not.
Hard to see the text.
Bring that up there. Okay. So we're going to pretend like we didn't do that.
So since this is kind of more of a sample,
This is fine. We're going to stop here and move to print. Sound good?
can we print just a small one so we don't have to, if
Yeah,
we're
well-
going to redo this later?
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome.
This is not centered according to my son. It is not.
Good
In
idea.
fact, the bottle is not centered, so I'm going to group everything real quick. And do this. Close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades. Okay.